What's up, guys? Hopefully it's not too windy because today we're going to be taking the Z on not quite its first drive since the new engine harness and transmission and everything, but definitely one of the first, I think 4 or 5. I have taken it out a few times, and there is really just one issue to address. So before I get into it, if you guys don't remember or you haven't seen the videos, what I went ahead and have done previously is we upgraded the fuel lines to PTFE-AN lines. Those are rated for like 4,000 PSI. Super nice lines. I ended up finding one leak in my lines when I started testing everything, and I just had to recut the line because when I cut it at a slight angle, which means it didn't get a perfect seal all the way around. So that was my fault, but I went ahead and trimmed it, put it all back together, and it is working really nicely. I haven't had any leaks whatsoever, which is always good for a fuel system. And then after we did the fuel system, we went ahead and made a custom harness for this. This is our brand new MegaSquirt harness. If you guys remember, there's a bulkhead connector, so we can completely take out the engine harness without having to undo everything. Super duper nice. Not really too much to report on that. Everything is working really well. I do have to go into the ECU and actually make sure all the tables are what they should be, because I selected the sensors and they all work. Like oil pressure, I can see the oil pressure, but I'm actually not quite sure if the table that it has for oil pressure is the actual one it should be, or if it's just like a generic map, but it seems to be reading the correct pressure, so I will have to double check on that. Other than that, it is looking really good. It runs really nicely, super strong. Excuse me. And one thing I want to mention before, the only thing that I messed up in the wiring harness is I don't know why I didn't think about it, but when the ECU sends signals to turn things on and off, stuff like that, specifically these fans, the radiator fans, I didn't realize it sends a ground signal. So what you typically would have, you know, say if I wanted to turn on the AC compressor, I'd give it positive 12 volts and that would activate it. And that's kind of what I was thinking, but it's actually the opposite way around, where it's a ground, and that makes sense because you don't want the ECU to be pushing out tons of power, possibly causing a short on something, and then you burn out your ECU. It'd be much better if it was a ground, and that's how the factory Z31 ECU is for stuff like the fuel pump. That is actually ground triggered, which is why you may notice the fuel pump actually has 3 wires. It's 2 grounds and a power. So I messed that up, and so I had these fans running through my relay, and I had power to one side of the relay, or sorry, I had ground to one side of the relay, and then I thought the ECU was going to send a power to turn on the relay, but it was actually just grounding. So I had 2 grounds on either side of the relay switch. So I had to flip that so that there was a positive 12 volts. I switched 12 volts, to be honest. I just redid the wiring I had over there. So now that both of those relays get switched 12 volts, and then they are grounded in order to turn them on. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward, I suppose. Another thing is I wired up the boost controller wrong as well. Same principle, it needs positive 12 volts, and then the ECU does a PWM grounding strategy, but I gave it ground and the signal, so that is actually backwards as well. I haven't switched it yet because I haven't hooked up my boost controller. I'm trying to get everything else kind of just running as it should first. But other than that, everything has been working pretty well. I've got one issue, which I'll talk about when we're driving around because it'll be most apparent then. But other than that, let's go ahead and get this guy on the road and see how it drives. Alright, well hopefully you guys can see all right. I don't know what the viewing angle of this is here. But we are in the Z, and basically the one issue that I'm having currently is with the transmission still. So if you guys remember, this is a brand new Z32 transmission, and it just sounds pretty bad when you drive it. And so I'm thinking the only thing that I haven't replaced on it is the countershaft bearing in the bell housing. So I'm going to, you know, take some audio samples of it, maybe take it to a transmission shop, see what they think about it. But odds are I'm going to have to pull the transmission one more time and at least replace that bearing, because everything else in the transmission is brand new. But hopefully you guys can hear it when we start driving. Other than that, I think the short shifter I have on it is just too short. I don't really like it. So I did order a OEM Z32 shifter. Hopefully that will make it feel just a little bit better. And it's a little bit far, so you guys remember we put the shortened bracket on it. I'm not a huge fan of that. I would love it to be pushed back, you know, another inch or two, just about right here. But, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of driving, and hopefully you guys can understand what it sounds like. But overall, it's you know, it's a lot of fun. It works at least, you know. You guys will really be able to hear when I give it some gas. It just kind of sounds pretty bad. Also haven't quite figured out where the gears are yet on it. Also, I have the louvers in the rear hatch right now, so if you guys hear some weird noises, it's probably the louvers. I'll roll my window up when I give it some gas up here. That way you guys can really hear the transmission itself. If you guys have any thoughts on it, of course, drop a comment down below. I believe this video is probably going to come out 2 or 3 weeks after I've recorded this, so I might have already done something, but I would still love to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions on the matter. I've been driving it around and I have a new dash. I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm working on this dashboard right now. It's a digital dash. It runs off of the MegaSquirt Studio dashboard. And I'm able to see my boost level, and so far I've seen it hit about 11. It has kind of broken up a little bit around high boost because I don't have it tuned properly yet. But so far we're hitting around 11 PSI, although I don't usually drive it up to 11 PSI. I'm gonna roll up the window, see if we can hear a little bit of this transmission, see what you guys think about it. I don't know how much of that you guys can hear. The best way I can describe it is rocks in a blender. You know, it's not really the best description, but it really just does sound like something just isn't happy in it. And bearing, I could definitely see that would be the issue. I just think it's weird because the countershaft bearing is a fairly large bearing, and so I don't feel like it would wear very easily. But then again, the transmission that I did pull the bell housing off of, I'm pretty sure had, you know, a couple 100,000 miles on it. So I do believe that could definitely be a bearing wear issue. So we're gonna go ahead and figure that out. I'm gonna send some sound samples to some people, see what they think. But now what we're gonna do is come over here, and I need to get some audio samples because I recently, well, not recently, a while ago, I had installed some sound deadening in here, and so I need to see what the difference in, you know, volume level is. Hopefully you guys can hear that transmission. I'm just coming to a place over here where I can get a nice straight open road. And then we'll pull out my phone and do some decibel meter sampling. This is the kind of stuff you do with project cars, just drive around. I wish my AC worked currently. I'm going to try to install an electric AC compressor. If you guys watched my video on the mil-spec harness, I did put in the provisions for that, so we will see how that turns out. It's going to be interesting, but I think it'll be pretty fun. So hopefully that works out. I'm just as excited for that as pretty much anything else on this car. I would love to get this to a nice modern classic just like level to where I can drive it around comfortably, have the reliability, but also have a car that you don't see every day. Just because I see a lot of cars that are really cool on the road, but I see a lot of them, unless it's like a super rare exotic, it's just kind of, not as cool when you have the same car that other people have. So I'd much rather have a Z31. I saw one of these driving down the road the other day. First time in a long time, actually. And it was like an 84, 85. But, you just don't see Z31s on the road that often. So what I need to do is pull out my phone real quick so I can take some audio samples. Alright, idling is around 65-ish, so we're going to see. I think I took the last one at 50 miles an hour, so I'm going to try to get roughly 50 miles an hour. I don't have a speedo right now, but we'll try to see what 50 miles an hour cruising is in fifth. We're somewhere around 75 decibels, which is pretty good, to be honest. I don't remember what the last decibels were. Roll my window down because it's getting hot. But and hopefully you guys are still recording. I think you are. I think I still see the light on. But I don't know. I put in a bunch of sound editing. That video should be coming out pretty soon. I think it just looks really cool. I don't know if it actually did anything. It took about an afternoon, or honestly like a full day, to pull everything out, put the sound ending in, and put everything back in. But it looks really cool. It only added, maybe 20 pounds of weight. And it also, I put it in the roof, I put it in the floor, so hopefully it's going to keep it a bit cooler in here, just during the daytime. Because it gets pretty hot in New Mexico where I live, so anything that I can do to combat the heat is definitely an added bonus. Alright. We'll go home now. I'm gonna roll your guys' window down. Maybe you guys can get some exhaust note. Hopefully it's not all just wind. quiet. It's super smooth. I think the short shifter has a lot to do with the smoothness of the gear shifts right now. So I'm going to be putting in the OEM shifter. I just got it in. I got new bushings for it as well. But hopefully that comes in soon. But honestly, it's not bad. I just don't want to drive it like this in a damaged position and possibly cause more damage to it later. Say it is nice driving the Z again. It's been not quite a whole year, but definitely like 8 or so months since I had driven it. So I'm definitely glad to be able to be back in it, and better than ever, of course. Even with the transmission making weird noises still. You know, I just love the power. The Mazda has absolutely nothing on it. Woo! And the sound, oh gosh, it sounds so much better. Obviously, it's, you know, a 3-inch. I did put a cat in it. It was an eBay cat. I don't think it does anything because it still smells pretty bad out the exhaust. But yeah, it just sounds like a nice, powerful car. Versus the Miata, it's just so boring. You know, I love the Miata. It's super fun to drive when you're, you know, going slow. But this car is pretty much the car you want to drive when you're going slow or fast. So, if you're going to get an MX-5, you got to turbo it. And I don't want to turbo the Shinsen just because it's rare, you know, it's a special edition. So, it just is how it is with that one. If I get another one, it's definitely going to get a turbo because it is so slow. But I also don't like the gearbox in it. It's too short, which I understand. It's a small car. It's not very powerful. But that's just how it is. Alright guys, I'm home. Hopefully you're still recording and here with me. I hope you guys enjoyed this ride along, and hopefully the audio came out okay. I don't know what it's sounding like to you guys, but other than that, hope you guys liked this, and I will see you guys next time.